Michigan State head coach Mel Tucker has announced that there will be no staff changes entering 2023. Wow. After a 5-7 year, where Michigan State was 3-6 in conference, where their offense was 94th in the country in scoring, defense 76th, and where the place kickers couldn't even make extra points half the time, I'm just in disbelief. I am in complete disbelief. I don't really know what else to say. I mean, this is akin to Mark D'Antonio not making staff changes. Now, the difference here is Mel Tucker's recruiting at a higher level, and he's utilizing the portal. Granted, Mark D'Antonio didn't have the same transfer portal that Mel Tucker does. The transfer portal back then was a whole different and much smaller animal. It was like akin to a kitty, whereas the modern transfer portal is akin to a tiger on steroids. And Mel Tucker is using that tiger on steroids very well. The problem, of course, is this staff. When your place kickers struggle to make extra points, when your punt return unit, your kick return unit, when just everything goes wrong there, and even he isn't fired. And then on offense, when Jay Johnson doesn't utilize a great wide receiver core, when Peyton Thorne severely regresses, and when, the tight ends aren't utilized, the play calling is just awful, and Jay Johnson doesn't get fired. And Scotty Hazelton, who has never commanded a defense that has been inside the top 50 in scoring, isn't fired. For reference, Eric Chinander at Nebraska, who's been fired, has had statistically more impressive defenses than any defense Scotty Hazelton has commanded at Michigan State. And he hasn't been axed. And finally, there's Harlan Barnett, who can't recruit and who's commanded some of the worst secondaries from 2020 to 2022. And he isn't canned. So I'm going to read an article by 24/7 Sports discussing this, written by Stephen Brooks. I don't know exactly what this is. I think it's complete lunacy. And I think that James Franklin, Ryan Day, Jim Harbaugh, Mike Locksley, anyone who finished ahead of Michigan State in the Big Ten this year, who can recruit at a similar or higher level and has a staff at a similar or soon-to-be higher level, is breathing a huge sigh of relief or dying of laughter. Just being serious there. You can recruit at a higher level all you want. You can utilize and abuse the transfer portal, but staffs matter. I mean, Don Brown, really, in retrospect, Don Brown and Jim Harbaugh, it only took two men to hold Michigan football back from winning the Big Ten 2 years in a row. It was a defensive coordinator and a head coach's stubbornness. The DC was fired. Jim Harbaugh had to make some own changes in the way he approached things. He made, leadership on the team more of a team and player decision in choosing captains and let players build their own culture, letting them choose uniforms, some little things, some big things. He made the staff younger, overall, more energetic, modernized the offense, and in a certain sense also returned to some of his older roots, going back to a pro spread instead of trying to adopt this speed and space thing that hadn't exactly worked out with Josh Gaddis. The staff matters a whole lot. And recruiting does too, but recruiting is only half of it. There's the players, and then there's the staff, the on-field staff, the off-field staff, the strength and conditioning. And Mel Tucker, I will say, is doing a great job over here in the recruiting and transfer portal and roster overhaul department. But not making staff changes after this season is nothing short of wrong, of disgusting. After assembling his initial Michigan State football staff ahead of the 2020 season, head coach Mel Tucker has had to make at least one new assistant coaching hire in each of the past two off seasons. As Wednesday afternoon, Tucker doesn't intend to make it 3 in a row. Tucker met with reporters at Spartans Stadium to discuss MSU's 2023 recruiting class signees, and since it was his first media session since the post-game press conference at Penn State on November 26th, he also fielded a few non-recruiting questions, including about the status of the coaches who helped compile that class. "I haven't planned to make any changes," quote unquote, Tucker said, "but there's always opportunity for guys. I'm never going to try to hold anyone back if they have an opportunity where they think they can better themselves, but I don't plan on making any changes at this time." Wow. Just wow. I can't even believe it. You know, outside of maybe Tucker himself, and even I might question that, but Mike Tressel, who's the DC at Wisconsin and who left Michigan State after the 2020 season to become the DC at Cincinnati in 2021, might be the best assistant, the best person on Mel Tucker's staff in his entire tenure. And he's the DC at Wisconsin, and he hasn't been there since 2020. Or Ephraim Reed, who coached Kenneth Walker and the running backs, and then that's not Ephraim Reed, that was William Piegler, pardon me. William Piegler left to become Florida's tight ends coach. It's him or Mike Tressel, and they're no longer on the staff. Marco Coleman and Brandon Jordan were the most recent hirees after Ron Burton and Tucker cut ties and mutually parted ways. They themselves, it's year one, but the pass rush really didn't improve whatsoever. But it's year one, so you got to give them some grace. I just look at this staff. I look at Michigan State recruiting. It's around top 25. They have 11 transfer portal commits, but you got to adapt to the times or you're going to die, especially in the Big Ten East, the SEC West, the SEC East. And once USC and UCLA join the conference, if they do decide to continue with their agreement and come on and join, and if the Big Ten somehow keeps divisions, then the Big Ten West will become this way. Mel Tucker and his current staff have a 12-13 record in Big Ten play and have had 2 losing seasons. The one exception, of course, being the 2021 season. The 2021 season, more and more, looks like, I'm not going to say a fluke, but it's getting close to that point. There's only been 3 years. One of them was good, and to Tucker's credit, he's had to deal with terrible talent from trash Mark D'Antonio recruiting. And I'm not taking shots here at the Michigan State program when I, throw around these words. But what I'm telling you is you can't do this and be a contender. You can't do this and have double-digit win seasons for more than once in a blue moon. You just can't do it, especially with the current talent. You get Michigan or Penn State's level of talent, maybe you can have some staff incompetencies. Believe me, as a Michigan fan who has really been only paying attention to college football for the Jim Harbaugh era going forward and a little bit of the Brady Hoke era, I have witnessed staff incompetencies, and I've witnessed how Michigan's talent has carried some of these incompetent staff members, like Brady Hoke, Tim Drevno, Don Brown, to success when in reality their schemes and their coaching was below average to average at best. And yet here we are. Michigan State doesn't have that level of talent. They're trying to get it, but it's going to take several years and several recruiting classes to get there. It's going to take a long-term approach to this sport. And this approach is not long-term. That may sound like a contradiction almost, because, firing coaches after every bad season isn't always the way to go, per se. Or just, having coaches come in and leave out isn't always, that doesn't preach stability necessarily. But this losing season shouldn't have happened. I thought that maybe Michigan State would go 5-7 if the injuries compiled, if this staff was overrated from a preseason perspective, but I had Michigan State going 8-4. And I thought if they were going to go lower or higher than 8-4, I thought that it was more of a likelihood that they would go higher and finished 9-3. I did. I thought that with, Kenneth Walker leaving and, Jacob Panashuk and Drew Beasley departing, I thought that they would take a step back, but it wouldn't be a huge step back, and it would be a few steps back for a great leap forward in 2023. And I don't know if that's happening. I really don't know if that's happening anymore. Some members of the staff are good recruiters. Coach Cap on the offensive line is a great example of this. Marco Coleman and Brandon Jordan too. What I will say about Michigan State is the Big Ten is all about trench play, and they're doing themselves a service because they are always in the running. David Hicks and Samson Okunlolo were examples of this. They're always in the running for high caliber offensive line or defensive line recruits. Michigan State's actually returning a lot of their offensive line entering next season, and some of their D-line too. So that'll be an area to watch out for. The Spartans should take a leap forward in those areas with all their returning production. And they've been recruiting highly in those areas. And with the reputation of Kenneth Walker at running back, Michigan State get looks by running backs. They just do. So they are building themselves to be a Big Ten team. They're not trying the Scott Frost experiment where you bring the Pac-12 in and then you just implode and look terrible. But despite the fact that some of these staff members are good recruiters, some of them are proven developers of talent like Brandon Jordan. As a private pass rush specialist, he had tons of success. There's no doubt about it. And I'm not going to count year one against him, especially losing Jacob Panashuk, Drew Beasley, and having Jacob Slade injured. That's not his fault. He can't control that. I expect him to do better in 2023. But others are obvious obstacles, like let's just say Harlan Barnett or Ross Ells, the special teams coordinator, and they hold back Michigan State from greater levels of success. I think the lack of staff changes is a grave mistake, and I've been advocating for changes to be made ever since Michigan State lost 4 games in the first half of the season. When they were standing at 2-4, I was advocating for staff changes. And after they beat Wisconsin, played close to Michigan, beat Illinois, and even beat Rutgers, I was still advocating for some staff changes because even if they won out and finished 5-7, the way they collapsed early in that year was unacceptable for a team that wants to be championship caliber. Scotty Hazelton has not coached a defense inside the top 20 in scoring, and if you want to say, well, his defensive play improved in the second half of the year and you want his job to be saved, you got to have a better secondary. You got to axe Harlan Barnett or someone. That's all I'm going to say for this video here, really. I don't have much else to say, but I am sorely disappointed. And I think Michigan State fans especially should be sorely disappointed. Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State's jobs just got a little bit easier. And for Michigan State, I think this is the safe option if we're being honest here. It is the safe option truly to keep everyone, but I don't think the safe option here is wise. Like, come on. Go out and hire a big-name OC or a big-name DC or get an under-the-radar candidate. I've listed several candidates for offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. Go use your strengths with depth at quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end and get Mark Whipple and adapt like a pro-style pass-heavy offense. It could work, and your running backs will still be involved. Go get Garrett Riley and have like a modern edition of the air raid where you can still be physical on the ground and in the trenches. Go get Robert Anae, who is a genius and a wizard and has turned around Syracuse's obtuse offense from last year into something spectacular. Go out, get a big hire, but Mel Tucker and his staff they've decided that the safe way is the better way, and I think that's only going to cost him and give him a 6 or 7, maybe 8-win season at the best next year, and it might not be pretty moving forward. That's all I have to say for this video, though. If you liked it, please make sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and comment your thoughts on this video down below. And if you're listening via Spotify, make sure to follow the channel. Bye-bye.